Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari.
And now chapter 22, enumeration of the elements of material creation. Uddhava inquired, "My dear Lord, O Master of the Universe, how many different elements of creation have been enumerated by the great sages? I have heard you personally describe a total of 28, God, the Jiva soul, the Mahatattva, false ego, the 5 gross elements, the 10 senses, the mind, the 5 subtle objects of perception, and the 3 modes of nature. But some authorities say that there are 26 elements, while others cite 25 or even 7, 9, 6, 4, or 11. And even others say that there are 17, 16, or 13. What did each of these sages have in mind when he calculated the creative elements in such different ways? O Supreme Eternal, kindly explain this to me." O Uddhava, because all material elements are present everywhere, it is reasonable that different learned Brahmins have analyzed them in different ways. All such philosophers spoke under the shelter of my mystic potency, and thus they could say anything without contradicting the truth. When philosophers argue, I don't choose to analyze this particular case in the same way as you have. It is simply my own insurmountable energies that are motivating their analytic disagreements. By interaction of my energies, different opinions arise. But for those who have fixed their intelligence in me and controlled the senses, differences of perception disappear, and consequently the very cause for argument is removed. O best among men, because subtle and gross elements mutually enter into one another, philosophers may calculate the number of basic material elements in different ways according to their personal desire. All subtle material elements are actually present within their gross effects. Similarly, all gross elements are present within their subtle causes, since material creation takes place by progressive manifestation of elements from subtle to gross. Thus, we can find all material elements within any single element. Therefore, no matter which of these thinkers is speaking, and regardless of whether in their calculations they include material elements within their previous subtle causes, or else within their subsequent manifest products, I accept their conclusions as authoritative because a logical explanation can always be given for each of the different theories. Because a person who has been covered by ignorance since time immemorial is not capable of effecting his own self-realization, there must be some other personality who is in factual knowledge of the absolute truth and can impart this knowledge to him. According to knowledge in the material mode of goodness, there is no qualitative difference between the living entity and the supreme controller. The imagination of qualitative difference between them is useless speculation. Nature exists originally as the equilibrium of the 3 material modes, which pertain only to nature, not to the transcendental spirit soul. These modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are the effective causes of the creation, maintenance, and destruction of this universe. In this world, the mode of goodness is recognized as knowledge, the mode of passion as fruitive work, and the mode of darkness as ignorance. Time is perceived as the agitated interaction of the material modes, and the totality of functional propensity is embodied by the primeval sutra or mahatattva. I have described the 9 basic elements as the enjoying soul, nature, nature's primeval manifestation of the mahatattva, false ego, ether, air, fire, water, and earth. Hearing, touch, sight, smell, and taste are the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, my dear Uddhava. And speech, the hands, the genitals, the anus, and the legs constitute the 5 working senses. The mind belongs to both these categories. Sound, touch, taste, smell, and form are the objects of the knowledge-acquiring senses, and movement, speech, excretion, and manufacture are functions of the working senses. In the beginning of creation, nature assumes, by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, its form as the embodiment of all subtle causes and gross manifestations within the universe. The Supreme Personality of Godhead does not enter the interaction of material manifestation, but merely glances upon nature. As the material elements, headed by the Mahatattva, are transformed, they receive their specific potencies from the glance of the Supreme Lord, and being amalgamated by the power of nature, they create the universal egg. According to some philosophers, there are 7 elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether, along with the conscious spirit soul and the Supreme Soul, who is the basis of both the material elements and the ordinary spirit soul. According to this theory, the body, senses, life, air, and all material phenomena are produced from these 7 elements. Other philosophers state that there are 6 elements, the 5 physical elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and the 6th element, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That Supreme Lord, endowed with the elements that he has brought forth from himself, creates this universe and then personally enters within it. Some philosophers propose the existence of 4 basic elements, of which 3, fire, water, and earth, emanate from the 4th, the self. Once existing, these elements produce the cosmic manifestation, in which all material creation takes place. Some calculate the existence of 17 basic elements, namely the 5 gross elements, the 5 objects of perception, the 5 sensory organs, the mind, and the soul as the 17th element. According to the calculation of 16 elements, the only difference from the previous theory is that the soul is identified with the mind. If we think in terms of 5 physical elements, 5 senses, the mind, the individual soul, and the Supreme Lord, there are 13 elements. Counting 11, there are the soul, the gross elements, and the senses. 8 gross and subtle elements plus the Supreme Lord would make 9. Thus, great philosophers have analyzed the material elements in many different ways. All of their proposals are reasonable, since they are all presented with ample logic. Indeed, such philosophical brilliance is expected of the truly learned.